What's up, everybody? A Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on the Space Reverse Engineers series. We are looking today at the Dr.K Industries Research Island PvP match. This one does, I believe, include an update from the Sparks of the Future. I didn't know that until I just read it. So some of you who have been following my channel and my inspiration series for a while probably recognize this map, or maybe at least. This was a map that I did a while back on the inspiration series, and there's a lot to love. Like, there's some really cool stuff. Now, a couple things I want to point out. This is a world build, and I do believe there are some mods involved, as we can see with stuff like these pipes and things like that. And it looks like these kind of lights and things. So I'm not really going to directly look at anything that looks particularly modded. However, I do encourage you to check out this map, though, because being a world build, you don't have to download a whole bunch of mods or anything. It'll just kind of do it for you. And if you're looking for different ideas and ways to build things, even something like this, just mood lighting and whatnot, there's a lot of little things that are pretty powerful tools in your tool belt, if you will, as a builder. So I wanted to check out a couple of things in particular. One is, I just wanted to make sure spinny things catch my attention. But that is, in fact, just a rotor. It's not all that complicated. The only complicated part would probably be ensuring spacing and stuff so that nothing gets scraped or broken as it's spinning. But that's always a really cool idea. The other thing you could do, just for reference, is if you wanted to make something like this functional, as I'm not sure that it is, you could use an advanced rotor and connect one of these ports to it, and then it would spin while also being functional. However, I believe the reasoning here for it being non-functional is, one, it's a PvP map, it probably doesn't really need it to work, but the other is that I'm sure visually the green light out the front was the intended look, and if you did it the way I talked about to make it functional, you'd have the actual port facing the front. So just something to keep in mind. But there's a lot of cool stuff here. I'm not going to be able to cover all of it just because this is a big map, and some of it isn't all that complex. It's just some different building techniques and things like that. Actually, I'll admit, I'm not even sure if I've seen the entirety of this map or not, because every time I turn around like this, I keep finding other places that I don't recall seeing. Now, a couple other things I wanted to mention. I have slightly modified this in terms of the mods that were used. I disabled the I enabled jetpacks, and I turned off the function where they detonate if you use them and stuff like that, mainly for exploratory purposes. So if you're going to run this map or something, just take note that it is designed as a PvP map. So if you just run in here and start trying to look around, I do think spectator mode is enabled by default, but just something to keep an eye out. I also wanted to talk about this, and there's launch pad areas in that radar dish up there. I think are the three main things I wanted to look at in terms of building structure. So this is something that I myself have only just started figuring out how to do, and that's multi-device, like rotors and pistons, multi-device structures. This has baffled me for a while. And recently, I actually did find a video that explained how to do some of this stuff, for those of you that don't know. So first of all, why can I not get over that railing? It's not that tall. First of all, this is fairly simple here, where you do the whole large grid rotor to a small rotor head trick. And then, I'm assuming this rotor is locked and stuff. We can just double check that to make sure, but... oh, it's actually not. However, there's no velocity, there's no torque, and there's really nothing moving on it, so it should be fine. And the rotor's actually off, so that helps. And in case you guys were not aware, I'm using the Build Vision tool thing. So it's basically just a small grid to a connector piece, or a main platform here, right? And then there's a rotor on one side where you build off of that and you build the next grid. Now how you connect that up to this one is you would build a rotor on the base, a second one, but you'd remove the head and then you'd place a head on the other edge of this build. So for example, I think I've got this in creative mode, but I can't seem to collect or select tools, so give me just a second to see if I can figure out how to fix that. Alright, so I got it fixed, and essentially, rather than talking about this to death, I was just going to show it to you. So, pretty much the same principle applies here as what I'm going to do, but you start with this base part here, and you would have one rotor that you're building off of, and then you have one that's going to align, like over here or something, with the other rotor. Then what you would do, if you could figure out where you were going, is you can go like this and select the actual rotor part and place it, and then once you're there, you can go in. You can go through the terminal if you want, but you know, and then you can click attach. And once it's attached, now these two grids are actually one grid, essentially. And you can see that the textures actually merged there, and they merged there. So now the game is actually seeing the two subgrids off of the rotor heads as one thing. So that's how you would basically do that. So once you understand that principle, then this bridge thing becomes a little less complicated. However, there is a little bit of an interesting situation here. So it is kind of a rope bridge, in a way. You can see how it kind of sags in the middle and stuff like that. So the intriguing part to that was that I'm not entirely sure if you could do this just with gravity or not. I'm not sure about this next point. It's possible that it could be done with just gravity, but it may need to be tweaked. And the reason I say that is because if you look at, let's use this side, if you look at the stats here, there's no braking torque, there's no regular torque, and there's no velocity. And also, just as a side note, the shear inertia tensor is off. I don't think that would be a big deal, but and you'll notice on, where is it? I checked this before. Maybe it's on the other side. Is it the other side? No. Where did it go? Some of these seem to have torque and stuff, and some of them did not. And now it's making a liar out of me and not showing it to me. For some reason, that's really weird. I swear when I looked at this the other day, some of them did and some of them didn't. Alright, well, maybe I'm just making that up. Or it's a different bridge. It's possible that it was a different bridge and that the settings are slightly different. So, since the settings are different, because I swear on one of these bridges, some of the rotors had torque and some of them didn't, and I was assuming that that meant there was a gradual resistance which made it more taut at the end than at the other. But if all of these have zero torque and zero braking and all that kind of stuff on all of them, then I guess that kind of disproves that. So I suppose this is held together with gravity then at that point, that it's just the sheer gravity and weight that makes it sag in the middle. So, at that point, all that would really be necessary is for you to blueprint the rotor base even, actually, or basically some kind of contact point where you could build off of the next one. It would either have to be the full rotor base, or I mean, the hard way of doing it is you could just do it all manually, I suppose, and just build the same pattern, but I would think you could use either landing gears or other things to hold it in place, have the rotor bases, essentially, to, yeah, I would probably say base to base, really, and then you could actually connect them with the rotor head attachment system type of thing. Although, now that I think about it, I do wonder if this was done as a solid blueprint, maybe, and then paste it in as one large piece and connect. I'm not really sure, because it's the gravity part that would make this a problem, because if you started here and you connected the head of the rotor there, this side over here should fall unless you lock the rotors or something, which may be what happened. It's possible that all of these rotors were locked, and so it resisted its sagging, and you can just cut and paste all of the different layers, and once all of the rotor heads are attached, you could go in and turn all of them, unlock all of them, and then it would just kind of sag. And the reason I say that is because, for example, I can show you what I'm talking about here. If we remove this rotor, actually we can just leave that rotor head there, it doesn't even do anything. So you can see it's not moving. But right now, the rotor's actually on, even though there's no velocity, there's no, well, there is some torque, but there's no braking torque and all that kind of stuff. So if we turn it off, as in it's not doing anything but isn't locked, you'll notice now it falls. So it is possible that all of this was done with locked rotors, and it created a straight bridge, and then eventually when the builder was ready, then you can just turn it off, and the rotor actually then sags a bit. Either way, this is a really cool build. Like, this bridge is really neat, and even knowing how it's done, it's one of those simple but not necessarily easy, because once you know how to connect all the rotors, it's essentially just a pattern of a step section with some railings and things. It's not all that complicated. And actually, you could replace some of these modded with some of the newer railings and stuff like that, if you didn't want to use mods. At least I think these are mods. I'm actually not sure, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, building it and having it actually completed and stuff, that actually feels like it'd be more of the tricky part, is how you would actually construct it, not necessarily the design of the mechanisms. But I wanted to show that because I myself have had a lot of problems with multi-piston and multi-rotor configurations, and I didn't know how to do that for a while. So I figured, since I've recently discovered how to do that through videos and stuff, that I would help anybody that's watching this with that if they were having an issue with it. Also, before we get into the next piece, I did want to talk about... Actually, this is a good spot to look at. I did want to talk about how we're going to be doing the voting process in moving forward for this series. I haven't had great results with just leaving comments and things like that. I had much better results with polling from the Inspiration series. So I'm going to do a couple of things, but first of all, I'm going to leave a link. There's either going to be a card in the right corner right about now, but I don't know because YouTube is finicky about what kind of cards I can put in videos. So if it doesn't let me, then look down in the description. It should be up near the top somewhere. But I'm going to leave a link to a community page that I'm gonna make a post with a poll in it for the community page, and I'm going to include the last 3 builds that were in the last episode of the Inspiration series that you can vote on, as well as an option for something else. If you pick something else or other or whatever it says, then leave a comment on that post and tell me what other build you're like, the name of it, so I can look it up or whatever. I'm not sure you should share the link just because I don't know if YouTube would flag that as spam, so just do the name of whatever build you're wanting me to look at. And I'm going to include that... I think I'm going to try and include that post in the description or something of the Inspiration series moving forward as well, so basically both videos will have the same post in them. I think that's going to be the idea. Now, I've said this before, because of the way I film these episodes, and they're so close together when I'm filming them, even though you guys see them almost a week later, like Tuesday to Saturday, do keep in mind that what you're voting for is going to be the next episode. So if I put it in the Inspiration series and you see that and you use it to vote, then that's going to be in the following week's reverse engineers. I know that's confusing, but at the moment it's the best I can do. But I feel like that would be a better and more centralized. I could put the links in both videos, blah, 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 and I wouldn't have to keep creating like a straw poll every week or something like that. So we're going to try it. Again, January, we're coming close of January, but it's kind of my testing month. So we're going to see how that goes. Now, back to the build. So these two things I wanted to point out. This one's really fun. This one's really cool. This one is interesting because I think it looks more complex than it actually is. So obviously there's the design aspect of you got these little half-block slopes and color palette and texture changes, which give it some depth and some different interesting looks. But in terms of complexity and building, you could effectively build this however you wanted, really. Now, as for control, I'm not sure how this is being controlled. I'm guessing it's either through a script or there's a remote block in here somewhere that you can take over and then use the camera on the front. I'm not too sure about that because, again, this is designed as a PvP map, so there may be a place, a control center or something for you to take over these, or it may just be a switch you can flip, like almost like a kill streak, and it can activate the turrets. I'm not really sure. But effectively, once again, this is essentially just a rotor with... I am going to do some damage here. I didn't really want to, but we need to get a better look here. So I don't see a remote block, so unless I'm missing it... Ooh. Controls, buttons, weird. Unless I'm missing it, I'm going to say this doesn't have a remote block, and it's probably controlled via script. But it's a large grid rotor with a small grid head, which again, the more complex you start building in Space Engineers, that's going to become a common thing because it lets you do subgrids, basically, which is super, super useful when you're doing stuff like this. And then there's just a couple of rotors that are using blast door blocks and have a few mechanical parts to control the gun turrets. So that's the arms, and then the base rotor lets you rotate, and it should give you mostly full range of motion for a turret. And then, as I said, there's a camera here, so again, probably script, possibly controlled elsewhere, or just for decoration. I'm not really sure. Now, this one's fun as well. We have a launch pad. No, not the Darkwing character, for all of you that, remember that show. So it's literally what it looks like. It launches you, which is really fun. It's a lot of fun. We'll show it in a second. So again, this uses that multi-rotor, or multi-device, basically, trick, which, like I said, once you start getting used to that mechanic of you could build all of this on one and then just add a rotor head and then attach it, your brain starts actually looking at designs for mechanical stuff and going, oh, and like you may have seen it in my Let's Play episode where I did a multi-grid piston hangar door type thing. It didn't work that well, but it was more sturdy, at least, than a lot of the wobbly stuff we see a lot of when you're just using one at a time. So again, this is a base large grid piston with a small grid on top of it. Then you've got the multi rotors, attaching to blast door blocks, some regular blocks, couple timer blocks, a button, and then some half blocks, slopes, and half blocks to create the little pad. This button goes to, I forget which one it is. I think it's this, because it says launch. So it goes to this timer block. All this timer block has is the rotor reverse. So the rotors here, which are set to 60 RPMs velocity, that's why it flings up so high, plus the torque. If I remember correctly, the torque determines how quickly it goes from 0 to maximum velocity. I could be wrong about that, but considering the speed at which this launches, I think I'm on the right track with that. So that's all that one does. It goes reverse, and then it starts this one, I believe. So I had that backwards. That's not all this one does. This one launches and then starts the next timer block, and you can see there's a 10-second or a 3-second delay here. And all this one does is reverse it again. So right now it's set to negative, so it's closed, and obviously there's settings done in these rotors that there's the lower limit and the upper limit to keep it from basically slamming into the ground kind of thing. So yeah, it'll launch you up, it'll wait 3 seconds, and then it reverses it, and then it comes back down. So it looks really complicated, but really it's not. It's just about finding the right angle on the rotors and setting a max and a minimum, setting the velocity fairly high, and the torque, setting that relatively high depending on how they're defaultly set, and then just a timer block to reverse it and start the next one, a little bit of a delay, and then one to reverse it again, and it goes back, and you get this, which is a lot of fun. Although admittedly, I've used that particular launch pad like twice, and I keep ending up like falling off the map, so I'm not really sure that it's angled correctly. But again, you could go in, they've also attached a control panel here. You could go into this control panel and change the direction of this lower base rotor if you wanted the angle to aim more towards like the bridge or something to that effect. So there's that. Another thing I thought was pretty cool was this antenna thing. Now again, this map was built a while ago, and I'm pretty sure it was built long before the I forget what the DLC is, but basically the snow DLC that added the actual radar dish. Plus, size-wise, I think this is a little bit larger than the one that comes in the DLC, so there's that. But yeah, so this is fairly simple when you start looking at it up close. You've got a horizontal rotor, a vertical rotor, and then some various blocks. Actually, this is just alternating 2x1 ramps going back and forth. I believe all of these are incomplete LCDs. Or windows. Okay, that makes sense. That would be a lot cheaper. Then you've just got tires and an antenna, and then the only other things that are different is adding these little slope lights in certain places, probably for if this map is run at night, but at a distance, looks really cool. So that's one thing I've noticed, particularly in trying to reverse engineer certain things, is that there's a lot of stuff in certain builds that look really complicated, and at a first glance you're like, man, how did they do that? I am so lost. Where am I going? That's not where I wanted to go. But the more you look at it, the more it's a lot of little simple designs that are kind of all stacked up on top of each other, and you get an overall really cool picture. The other thing that I wanted to point out is these tendril type ropes that are holding the islands together. I would like to explain scientifically how you would do something like this, but frankly, I'm fairly sure, that's sure and certain at the same time, sure, I'm fairly sure that this is just voxel hands with a specific texture and material, and it's just probably done in a freehand click and drag kind of thing, or a little at a time, but I can't say that it's one of those where, you know, oh, if you use these settings, it works every time. I'm pretty sure this was just eyeballed, probably. Anyway, that would be my guess. There is one other thing that is more of a building technique that I wanted to show, if I can find it. Oh, ended up back where I started from. That's not where I meant to be. I was looking for the starting area, and this map is a little bit of a maze, I'm not gonna lie. I mentioned this, I think, in my inspiration episode that I first showcased it in, that it really reminded me of an old school Halo map kind of thing. Not anything specific, just the style of it was very old school Halo design kind of thing. Here we are, this is where I wanted to go. I do not know why these screens are flickering. I'm not sure if that's a Space Engineer's glitch due to this being an older map. I'm not sure if those are modded and the mod isn't working, or if it has to do with the textures that are supposed to be loaded, but there's definitely an issue with those screens, but I have no idea how to fix that. And also, it's not really supposed to be there. That's not intended behavior, so. But I wanted to talk about these little lamps. Now, again, I know we went from turrets and bridges and stuff to lamps, but I don't always, I mean, I like to reverse engineer the technical side, and I wanted to focus more on that as I've changed kind of my focus of how I play Space Engineers a little bit this in 2021 towards a more technical and mechanical focus. However, I did also want to use reverse engineers for building techniques and things, and kind of breaking down how somebody went about doing a design as well. And I particularly, at a glance, found these standing lamps to be really convincing. Like, they look really cool, and it almost looks like a air quote lamp block or something to that effect. But it's actually super simple. Again, it's a lot of little things that you stack on top of each other and you get a cool picture at the end. So it's just interior pillars. I think that's what they're still called. Yeah, interior pillars. You put a flat, no railing catwalk on top that's not the one of the see-through ones. It's not one of the see-through ones. And then I think one of the most ingenious techniques done on this is just top and bottom, back to back, sloped lights. But it makes them look more like a complete light at a glance rather than just being a cut-off edge or something. It actually looks like more of a triangular light bulb kind of thing. So I really thought those were cool. I thought that was a really neat building technique. Again, I'm sure there's a million other things I could point out in this build. This build is really big. It's a huge map, and there's a lot of little things peppered throughout the whole thing, all of which are really fun and creative. So if you're looking for more, I encourage you to download it and check it out yourself. And once again, remember to vote what you'd like to see next, even if it's not what's listed in the poll, but check either the description or the cards, whichever. Oh, that's actually a cool cool arch. That's another good one. What block is this? Is this a mod? No. Okay, it is a 2x1. It's just got a connected texture. Alright, so it's a 2x1 ramp on the bottom, and then 3 slopes back to back, and then 2 ramp bases and 1 half block. That's actually a really nice little arch. I like that. Oh, and there's this. I thought about talking about this, but essentially this is literally just a fan-type design that's built on a rotor. You can kind of see the design to it. It's not all that complex. And the lighting, I'm not sure where it's placed, but it's spotlights that have been placed behind the stone and used the I'm dubbing it a lighting glitch that just kind of fade through the top, which is a very cool effect kind of thing. I really like the mood lighting it gives off. Spotlights are tricky. Like, if used well, they're really cool, but they're kind of tricky to do well. Actually, I'm noticing there's a lot of embedded lights in the stone, because you're seeing a lot of lights, but there's no light blocks. I didn't catch that before. So that's a nice little trick too, is embedding spotlights and stuff. But it is a bit more of a creative build thing. You could do it in survival, but it'd be pretty tricky. Whereas in creative, you could spectator camera through the stone and place them up there and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little less difficult to do that. Not that it can't be done in either mode. But with that, we're going to wrap things up here for today. Like I said, do check the community tab link in the description and leave your vote on what should be reverse engineered next. Again, I'm going to build the poll based on the last 3 builds I did in the Inspiration series, and we're probably going to include that in both the Inspiration and Reverse Engineers episodes moving forward. But I will leave a tab for other if you don't like any of those 3 options, and if you don't and you decide you want something else, then be sure to leave a comment and let me know what you would rather see. If you like how that system works and you want me to keep using it and don't want to bother with stuff like straw polls or things like that, also go ahead and leave a like on the poll, so that'll let me know that you guys are okay with that method, because I'm still trying to figure out what the best method for getting user submission is as well. If you want to discuss the Reverse Engineer series or have some other ideas and it doesn't fall under the poll or anything like that, I still encourage you to leave the poll, because that's probably where I'm going to leave your vote on the poll, I mean, because that's probably where I'm going to look to make my decision on what's next. However, there is the Discord server, and there is a specific Reverse Engineers channel for it, so do check that out if you want to just discuss things more or have a more lengthy, in-depth conversation about it. With that, we're going to wrap things up here for today. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell, and just click any other bells and buttons and whatever else you feel like pushing, because there's yeah, I stand by my assessment that YouTube has too many buttons now. So push them all if you like, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.